What's up, guys? Jordan from Bennett's Customs. We are back on another episode. This one's slightly different for you crazy hot rod purists. Might not be the most interesting video for you, but there's gonna be a lot of fab work, which is gonna be exciting. I'm gonna probably go and do a proper intro on this. This is my mate's van. It is a split window. As you can see, they are very sought after and quite rare. I'm not a Volkswagen guy by any means. Yep, for the purists, it's probably, again, for the Volkswagen purists, you're probably gonna hate me because I'm gonna do certain things to this that you would not do, but that's what I enjoy to do. It is a split window and it's very cool, sort of. It's got neat things going for it. One of the coolest things that really piqued our interest was this down here. You've kind of seen it if you guys have followed our channel. This is a 2-liter, 3-cylinder radial motor made for like gyrocopters and airboats and that. And they have been designing them, manufacturing them in South Australia, and they have been going all over the world. They're a very special, very cool motor, and it's just different, and I love different, so this really piqued my interest. So this is the mock-up one. The future one will be coming shortly, and we will have to do tons of fab work for this inside, for all the tanks and everything, and a custom intake, custom exhaust. There's probably gonna be a turbo, so that'll be really cool. We're not going the traditional kind of white on the top, dark on the bottom. It is gonna be flipped. Kind of moving right into this video, what we need to do, first step is inside. You can see that these things definitely do not have a lot of room. And saying that, the gentleman that owns this is extremely tall. He's probably an inch taller than I am. A little bit bigger set than me as well, not such a beanpole. And he wants a bit more space in this. So unfortunately, we have this kind of bulkhead that travels along the whole back of it. And if you guys aren't familiar with them, it is where the spare tire used to kind of sit. So you flip this up, your spare tire would sit in the back. This also kind of comes forward or up or out. They're kind of easily detachable. But this has got to be fabricated, and I need to make one that the driver's side or half of this actually sets back at least another 4 inches or so in order to kind of get him a little bit more room. So what's gonna be cool is I do really wanna replicate these nice bead lines that have been pressed into the original panel. So we will use the contour gauge. I'll make a set of dies for the power hammer, and then we're gonna kind of come up with a cool creation that looks like something that was designed from Volkswagen and came out with it. And you'll probably never see it, but for anyone down the road in 100 years time that wanna restore this again, they may say something kind of cool. I'm just babbling on now. Josh needs to go work. Okay, let's get into it. As you can see, I'll just take you inside here. This thing's in really good shape, but unfortunately, I don't even want to because it's just such a nice piece, but I have to do something about this. Now, if this spare tire wasn't here and this panel that's been made for it, then I could basically kind of split this straight down the center, move this one back, and we could kind of make a filler piece and it'd all look good. But if I cut it in the center and lean this back, I'm left with this void. So I either have to cut this piece out, which is an option, and then maybe weld a new piece in, or I can try and very strategically remove this piece and make a new one. So what I'd like to do is run a few braces across just to make sure that nothing's gonna move while we do it. And then I need to decide whether or not this piece is gonna come out as a whole, or if we just trim it and we can lay a bit back and I can make a filler piece. All right, so what we've done so far, I've just kind of mapped out where we're gonna cut this and how much we can leave. It's a bit tricky, but I'm hoping we can kind of work around my idea and hopefully it'll work. So we got our center line here. We're gonna cut along this line down through the beads themselves, because I want to join into these and make a new one. And these will travel across the panel. And then we're gonna cut right along here. Right, so we've kind of done our initial cut, and then on this side here, I have to use the spot weld drill bit in the drill and then remove all these spot welds along here so I can remove this panel. So we're gonna do that now. Wow, there you have it. Panel in, panel out. Well, definitely made a lot more space. Should just cut the whole thing out. I've seen a lot of guys cut it out. They take this piece out, take this out, and they make like a walkthrough. But I reckon it's safe to say we should try and leave a bit of the rigidity there if we can. So, but I'm happy with that. Get this off. Well, there's our panel. There's our void that we now need to kind of create. So I've kind of run around. I've just cleaned up all the area. Up the side of the B pillar here where it was spot welded, I've just cleaned all that up. And what's gonna happen is we're gonna have to make sort of a kind of a mini subframe that's gonna go on here that will support this bit. So we got to make sure that it's still structurally sound and kind of work as well. So, but kind of our next step forward. So what I need to do is I need to kind of fill this part in to about here, and then we will kind of lay this part back and we'll make a filler piece for in here. But I want to continue this body line and finish it, you know, just before that bend so it looks like it's factory, sort of like the finish on these ends here where they kind of roll out. So that's going to be a little bit tricky, but I think I should be able to do it. Otherwise I could kind of cut these out and use those ends and kind of weld them in. It's a lot of work, but I just think it'd look really nice. But what we got to do is make some profile dies. So I got my contour here. We're going to press this in, and then that's going to allow us to have a male version and a female version on this side. We're going to transfer this to some steel, cut it out, and then we're going to stick it in the power hammer. We're gonna also test to see if it's gonna shrink a whole lot. So I'm gonna kind of measure a piece, make it square, run a pass until it fits this, and then I'm gonna measure it again and see how much the material pulled in, so that I know and I can kind of do my measurements off each one for getting the size right. So let's basically press this in now and we'll make a set of profile dies. All right, so I'm just gonna try and pick it up on a pretty sturdy spot, maybe down on this one where there's not a lot of flex in the panel, so I can kind of get the most accurate. That's it there. Okay, so that we have our male version, our female version on this side, and if I put this up to it, that is exactly it. All right, so now we need to go and transfer this onto a piece of cardboard. We'll cut that out and then we can transfer it to the steel itself. All right, so what I've done, I just found some flat bar that is gonna work. So I just cut it in half and then this is gonna be my profile. I'm not too sure if I should make it wider, if that would make a big difference. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't, but I'm just gonna try and making them this size. And we're just gonna have to add our little tongue for the male side of this. So this will have to be sort of welded on, or I'll cut it out like that. And then the other side will have the cutout of this, like that. So I just wanna make sure I'm kind of doing it right. I'm just gonna clean these up. This is, yep, surface to surface. That's what we want to try and have. That's it right there. Bang, 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 bang. I might make the female version first, and then we can kind of make the male part of it. What I do want to do is try and, I'm just going to split this in half so I get that right. And then that way I can kind of line up the other one. All right, so now we have a scribe on each side. I'll do the same to this one. Whoop, look, it doesn't have to be perfect either. All right, so what we need to try and do, I'm going to use my Sharpie. Run it on both sides and on the top, like that. We'll let that dry. Then I'm gonna grab my scribe, wherever that guy is. Gonna take this profile, we're gonna sit it right on here, and then that way I can So there you go. So we have our line there, line on this side. So what I need to do is try and clean all this out. Yeah, I don't know what the easiest way to do this is. Maybe it's to try and do this one first, and then after you're done with that, I can kind of sit it on there and scribe around it. Yeah, so it's probably cleaner on the male side of it first. So maybe I'll actually do that guy. Ooh, I think I have an idea. I'm gonna weld a piece on here. I'm gonna try and cut it out of the corner. I think this should work. Probably better off cutting this at 45, maybe in the saw. And once that's cut, then I can tack it to this piece, and then we can cut the end off, and then I can kind of shape it how we're supposed to, and then I can make that side. Tricky, these little profile dies. Might actually try and put this onto a piece of cardboard, poster card. I'm gonna grab a piece. I don't like this gauge, how it's like, wish it was off to one side so you can like legitimately put this down. All right, so now I can lay that on right on my edge. I don't know. I think it's close. Might just try and cut that off. We can kind of sort of blend it. I don't know, but I think it'll work.
Or I'll be gone. Pouring rain, wanna hear that train. There she comes. Won't you get on? Won't you get on, boy?
All right, what we're gonna try and do is just file these as close as we can get them to where our lines are.
Watch the trees, falling leaves, like the breeze. Won't you blow on? Take a sip, I'ma pack my grip. One more trip, and I'ma move on. I'ma move on.
All right, we have our male version and we need to make the female version. All right, well, we have our mark. Let's see what we can do with this.
Across the track, don't look back. All the jack, won't you roll on? City lights, what blinds your eyes? Don't look twice, won't you go on? Won't you go on?
Have you ever met Miss Lindy? She's a gal with the bright red hair. Now she stands out from all the rest. You know her anywhere. Well, she's mine. Yeah, she's mine. Well, I love that little girl with the bright red hair. Well, Miss Lindy, my Miss Lindy. Well, I love that little girl with the bright red hair. Have you ever seen Miss Lindy? She likes to dance all day, and when she does rock and roll, it takes your breath away. Well,
Okay, so now that that's basically it with our little 0.9 of a gap that we want for our sheet metal. I think it's relatively close. It might just need a little bit of feathering on this side. And then what we need to do is actually bevel these edges and kind of, yeah, clean them up a little bit. So I'm gonna try and do that now. So stick these back in here. So I need to kind of evenly do this. So again, with that Sharpie, I might just run it along the edge, and then I can kind of trace off the edge however much I want to bevel this. It doesn't have to be a lot, it's just enough so that the metal runs clean through. And we need to do the top too. And this is just going to give us a reference on how much to grind the corners, because we want to bevel them. And then we can kind of clean them up really nicely. So when we go to file this edge, we'll have this little kind of reference point on here, so you don't want to go any farther past it. All right, so we got our lines worked out, and what I'm doing is I'm actually using the round file in the corners just until we make contact to our lines. I'll do them in the corners here as well. And this is just going to help our blending on the corners so that we don't make any marks in the steel, I'm hoping.
Have you ever met Miss Lindy? She's a gal with the bright red hair. Now she stands high from all the rest. You know her anywhere. Where she's mine. Yeah, she's mine. Well, I love that little girl with the bright red hair. Well, Miss Lindy, my Miss Lindy. Well, I love that little girl with the bright red hair. Have you ever seen Miss Lindy? She likes to dance all day, and when she does rock and roll, it takes your breath away. Well, she's mine, yeah, she's mine. Well, I love that little girl, she's so fine. Well, Miss Lindy, my Miss Lindy. Well, I love that little girl, right. Miss Lindy's hair is fire red, her eyes are water blue. And when Miss Lindy smiles at me, oh, what it makes me do. Well, she's mine, yeah, she's mine. Well, I love that little girl, she's so fine. Well, Miss Lindy's hair is fire red, her eyes are water blue. And when Miss Lindy smiles at me, oh, what it makes me do. Well, she's mine. Yeah, she's mine.
Okay, so you saw, we just did a quick time lapse of passing through. It actually came out all right. If we bring it over to our panel and we stick it on, you can see like it's like near on perfect actually, which is really cool. So we could, you know, in the video I didn't film, this is the other piece that I was originally going to leave, and I'm kind of kicking myself now because I could have pulled that whole panel out as one piece, which would have been better for someone else restoring one, but I could still put it all back together. But what I thought was, I spoke to Carl because I'm getting the issue, if someone can give me a tip, that we're getting a little bit of kind of shape this way in the actual bead itself. And I don't want that. And this is actually our first test piece, and I could see that part of the die was actually hitting it too much. So I was maybe thinking that is actually stretching the material, because this essentially is not stretching it. These dies only come down the thickness of this material plus some. So this is 0.95, so I'd adjust that to about 1 mil so that it's actually not stretching any of the material, it's just forming the material itself. So we did speak on the phone, and he kind of brought up a really good idea that if I were to leave this in and trying to get all these to line up on one piece with the amount of shrinkage that happens in this panel as well, that it's going to be really tricky. So it would almost be better to do like a wood form where we route out the areas and then we run this through the hammer on a different set of dies, and we can actually put that shape in, and then that way it allows us to get a better finish on the end, because where we'd like to actually finish these is kind of straight across. So I did think about doing it that way, but then I was just like, well, I could just remove this panel. I could make one nice big piece. I'm still measuring these all out. So right now I have them laid out, and I'm gonna run each one of these through and then see what it looks like. This is going to be where the break is, and then I will do the same. I'll drill a few holes, and then we can spot weld that back into the pillar. One cool thing that I just kind of came up with real easy was just literally a piece of 100 by 10 flat bar. I just cut a little notch out that was the same size as the outside diameter of the bead itself. And what I had done was I ran to a line, and I just ran it all the way. And then this was obviously quite distorted, which would tend to happen because there's so much stretching happening in this one area with nothing else here. So it's kind of like really holding it. So I put it in the press, and I just pressed it down, and it kind of gave me this really nice finish. It's kind of hard to see in the camera, but it's a really nice finish. It kind of rolls out. It's got this nice little edge on it, similar to the edge that goes around. And as you can see, there's no distortion anymore. So it kind of just flattened it out. And if I need to, I can kind of run around each one with the planishing hammer just to make sure that we can kind of flatten those areas out. So I'm gonna give it a try and see if it works. If it works, happy days. If not, I can come up with a different idea or yeah, create something a bit different. But this is kind of like a really fun panel to try, you know, getting my head wrapped around making profile dies for this specific hammer and kind of learning how it works. So I think I may even, you know, I could even essentially, I'm not sure if maybe pre-stretching this area through the English wheel like I've kind of done for using the bead roller might help. But the only thing is that essentially, as I explained, I don't think that's stretching the material. So I don't know if I need to pre-stretch it in order to shrink that material. So, but that's what's good about test pieces. I'm just gonna probably do quite a few of these. I've already done a few off camera, just trying to come up with a few ideas. This was originally the one that I had just stopped it, and then I just hit it with a hammer to see if it would actually even kind of relax out, and it did. So now we've kind of made that, you know, the 2.0 version with the little die. So I'm just gonna lay it out. We'll cut this out, and then I'm just gonna run multiple passes. I also upgraded a few bits on the actual hammer itself. On this side, if Ben comes over, it had this little plastic knob that was kind of the release or tighten for your back guide. And I had this nice piece of stainless that I had bent up for a mate's sissy bar for his early panhead. And I had twisted up some 10 mil stainless or 12 mil stainless, which was really cool. So I had it sitting there. So all I did was just literally weld it to a bolt, just put this sleeve on so I'm not catching my fingers on the threads. But that now will go in here and yeah, locks into place there. A little bit easier to use rather than the knob itself. And then on this side, I had this little grub screw with an Allen head in it and a little wrench, and this kind of holds this bottom collar for when you're adjusting the bottom post. And I took that off and just had a little bit of 8 mil stainless and just put a little bend in it, welded it too, and that's just a lot easier to use. So small little upgrades that just make it a little bit easier to use rather than, you know, using a wrench and an Allen key there and tightening everything. It's all just nice and easy, fluid, trying to make it more fluid. So, but yeah, absolutely love this thing so far. So now let's get a big panel in there and see what we can do. All right, so we kind of have everything laid out how we want it, and I'm just trying to foresee as much material bending ideas before I cut this, because I don't want to have to add material to it. So I can always cut material off, but it's a lot harder to add it. So as you can see, I've kind of laid everything out. I've made a break for the top, so it's going to kind of come up 90 degrees, and it'll kind of match this here, and then we're going to put that bevel on that looks like this. So we will try and replicate that piece, if not use it. And then what I've done, just for the way I do my layouts when I'm kind of doing any bead rolling or bending or anything, is I lay everything out, and then I have I'll put a C on the line, so I know that's my cut line, and then I have a B, that's my bend line or my break line, and then I usually do arrows to know which way the break's going to be, so I know that these have to be broken this way. They have the arrow this way, whereas on this side the arrow is facing down, which means I know they have to be broken kind of up towards us. So we have our bead lines here. Oh, this is a bead line here as well, close to the bottom. So there's where our beads are going to go. What I had done yesterday too, so this is before I get into that, I'll just show you, this is the bit that's actually going to be laid back. So this is how much we're laying back the seat itself. It's 130 mil to the bottom. So hopefully that will work. And then what I did yesterday, I believe it's on this piece, I had mentioned that this thing doesn't actually shrink or stretch the material because it's not pinching it and stretching it, but I think because of how much it's moving, it distorts a little bit. And what I had done was I ran this bead in the English wheel and pre-stretched it as if I were doing like a bead roll in it as well, and it actually came out like almost, well, considerably flatter than our original one that we had no stretch in it at all. So if I can get a light on here, hopefully you can see this. So you can see that big gap on this one. That's the original one. And then this is the one that is pre-stretched. So it's just a tiny bit in the center, but out to the sides is really good. So I think what I might do is, after I put this in the brake and cut this piece out, I may just run a few lines in the bead roller and just pre-stretch these areas before we go and put it into the bead. And what I did was I did allocate this bottom piece, so this is kind of material that I'm allowed to take off. So all of our measurements are kind of this way, but what's going to happen is this material is actually going to this whole thing's going to kind of shrink a little bit, so I need to kind of take that into consideration. So hopefully by pre-stretching it, and then where we're going to end our lines, it won't distort too much.
All right, so we have it all cut out. All of our flanges that we have to bend are all notched out, kind of radiused a few of the edges. So we're kind of ready to start putting some of our beads in. So I've made a stop. So this is kind of where they stop. Sort of these ones are a little bit closer to the edge, but I'm just going to bring them about 40 mil to the edge themselves here. So this is where they are going to stop. So we're going to have the bead travel along here. They're on the bottom side of this line. So this is kind of the top of the bead. So the end will sit sort of in here. So you kind of have your two indentations like that. So what I'd like to do is actually, I'm just going to quickly make a center line, and then I'm just going to run that center line through the English wheel. We are going to stretch it a little bit. Hindsight, before I did any of this layout, I should have sanded this panel and got rid of all the surface rust. Definitely don't like running through the die, so note to self, next time, make sure the panel is nice and clean. And then we can kind of get this set up. So you really want to make sure you have a really clean wheel. I did clean this prior. I may just give it one little wash. I'm just using a little bit of metho and a nice soft rag. This should get any impurities off the wheel itself. Again, you just want to make sure that you have a clean panel as well. I did mention that before, where it's going to make contact. So I can just match that line up with our top line. So you can kind of see what I mean by that. So that's already put a lot of stretch in that there. So I'm kind of hoping that will help when we go to form it. I could probably run a couple kind of close to it. I need to kind of hold this up as long as it's sort of around the area. So that one I've kind of driven out a little bit farther, but that's still okay because that's still part of the bead. So I think we'll be all right there. All right, so as you can see, we have put a lot of shape into that. The track is somewhat similar. This one was our first one where I kind of got the wobble, but then I started to get in the groove. So I'm not entirely sure if this is gonna work, but we'll only know until we go and stick it in here. So we're going to get set up with our power hammer here and decide how we're going to set this up, making sure our guides, everything is square. In the perfect world, if this was to go through, it would start the bead directly where we want it and fold up and in. Okay, that's it. So gonna add some lubrication here to both sides. We know our panel is clean. It's gonna be a bit of distorting on our first pass until everything kind of smooths out. So I think when I did the original pre-stretch, I may have done it the wrong way. I think I needed to pre-stretch it the opposite way. And it was curved this way, so I was trying to eliminate that, so I was adding stretch. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I pre-stretched it the wrong way. Oh well, let's see what happens. Slightly confused. Okay, this is going to be tricky too. I haven't done a piece where I've done both ends, so I need to just unlock it and then just go up a smidge. And then I need to unlock this guy. All right, so this one, it definitely distorted the metal a fair bit. It's not straight. Now, having said that, there's a lot of factors that kind of play into that, but really, from the original kind of conversation that I was having with Carl about it, is definitely using the wood and making a buck for both sides, routering out our bead line, and using the hammer that way would essentially be the best way to do it, because you have 2 bits of ply on either side with a bolt going through. So essentially the metal has to shrink. It can't move. It can't pull from anywhere. It has to stretch. Sorry. So doing that, you'd literally, it's going to stay in that memory, in that flat bit sandwiched between those pieces of ply. And then you just run up and down where you've cut your router area out and run that through the hammer. Definitely the way to go. So having said that, I've already made this panel and I've already started to do one. And what I'm going to do is, I don't really want to like I'm kind of already started it, and I could probably make a piece and do it. But what I want to try and do is, I want to try and finish off all these beads. I've clamped a bit of steel on here to try and keep it somewhat flat. Hoping that'll kind of work a little bit. But what I want to do is I want to go through, I want to do each bead, I want to break all these edges, I want to shrink the areas that need to be done, and I want to make it, and then I want to see. It's probably not going to work, but I want to show, like, obviously the panel and the way I thought could work, and then, if it doesn't work, then we can kind of eliminate that and go, yeah, no, that's not the way it's going to work, and then we can try doing it the wood buck way, which we know will work. So I just want to show, trying to complete the panel and see how bad it really is. If not, maybe it is. Maybe I can save it. Maybe not. But I want to show kind of both ways. It's not always perfect. So, I definitely have gone through my fair share of panels. I wish I was like Aiden from Bespoke, who's never thrown a panel away. All right, so I kind of have a feeling that it's still obviously got a bit of bend because of how much material is right here. So I could essentially, I need to shrink a little bit here, I think, prior to actually doing that bit. But I kind of have a feeling that the guides, or not guides, it was just trying to keep the panel straight. I feel like it worked, maybe. Maybe I spoke too soon. Boring. All right, I'm trying something new again. This is cool though, I enjoy doing this. It's very much a learning experience. I've made a little cross piece. I've sandwiched it with the clamp underneath with a piece of flat bar. So I'm kind of hoping that we don't distort this too much, and it maybe, you know, unless realistically a bolt would be good so it can't pull it, but it still might pull the material a little bit. But we're just trying to eliminate as much kind of distortion as possible. So I think on this side as well, if I clip it down, again, put that flat bar underneath it, we'll clamp it, and this should kind of help out. All right, so a little update. We have this bit fixed in just temporarily while we make some other measurements. What we're doing now, I've done all the measurements for here. Fingers crossed we did it right. I got it all laid out here. I've done all of our pre-planning for all of our bends, our 45s, our little tab where I missed on the other one, our bottom. But rather than putting this through the power hammer and doing the same swages and kind of struggling with the distortion that I kind of did with the last piece, I'm going to cut this out and I'm going to weld this in to that piece, which I think will look really cool. It's kind of obviously where the spare tire was, and it's got this really neat sun that's embossed, very similar, the exact profile of the beads that we just put in there. So I think this will look really neat. So all I had done was just held a piece of rope here with the Sharpie. I just did a big ring right around it. I'm gonna cut this out, and then we're gonna lay this face down, drill some holes, cleco it in, scribe it, cut it out, do one big weld. I was kind of unsure whether or not to put all the brakes in this panel pre-welding this in or doing it post. And I think it's probably best to weld this into a flat panel, so then I have lots of area around to be able to planish my weld to try and get it back to relatively flat again. And I'm saying relatively because I probably will struggle to get it perfectly flat because I'm not very good at doing that, but I'm learning. So once that's done and it's flat again, then we can go through, break all of our angles, and it should, you know, structurally kind of hold it nice and sound. So we are going to cut this out and weld it into that panel. All right, so we got it sanded, both sides. I'll clean up the inside after. Might even just take a quick photo of that. I think it looks quite neat. So our back side of this, kind of did think about something too. I really hope my measurements are correct for this, because once we weld this panel in, we cannot do it again. Well, we could cut it all out and redo it all, but that would defeat the purpose. So fingers crossed, we get this right.
It's a mystery to me how it all could happen. A puzzle I just can't solve. Since I'm out of tears, I resort to laughing. How did I ever get involved? It was a case of mistaken identity. I thought you were my love. I thought you were my love. A case of mistaken identity. I thought you were my love. I thought you were my love. Didn't know I was looking, but I must have been. 'Cause it got me cooking up a mind of sin. You were no good, and I was no better.
All right, I did exactly what I said I wasn't gonna do. I wanted to weld this into the panel dead flat, be able to planish it a little bit easier, and then I'd break all the edges. And I did the complete opposite. I think this is really gonna work. So this bottom second one up, that's kind of the same bead line. We're kind of trying lining up with this, or I may even just kind of do it where it sits and looks nice, kind of center it. But I think that looks really cool. So it'll essentially look like that. That is lined up. So something like that. So I'm super happy with where this is gonna sit. Again, if I grab I had a pencil, but I can just use a Sharpie.
It was a case of mistaken identity. I thought you were my love. I thought you were my love. Just a case of mistaken identity. I thought you were.
There it is. Super nice, clean scribe line. So obviously, when you're doing a job like this, where it's a big weld on a flat panel, you really want to make sure the fitment is perfect. The longer you spend on your fitment means the less filler rod you have to use for the weld and the less distortion, because it's consistent amount of heat. So fit up perfect, which means, again, perfect amount of heat going through consistently and less filler rod when needed. So it's just overall, if you have a better fitment, it's a better job in the end. So I'm gonna spend my time, I'm probably gonna cut as much of this out as I can, as close as I can, and then I'm gonna probably have to go in there with the grinder. It is gonna be tricky because it's on an inside radius, so it's gonna be a little bit of work, but I think we should be able to get there. Okay, so I have some ply underneath because I need to try and lift it up because of my brake here. There's a little small one here, so it's really hard to try and get it level on the table, which sucks because initially when it was going to be a flat panel, it would have been so easy to weld. But this I can make work. It'll do the job. Initial fitment, really good. There's probably a few little areas I'm gonna have to like kind of touch up as we go. But I'm really happy with this fitment right here. There's like no lip at all. So I'm kind of thinking I'm just gonna start, and we're gonna start to tack this all the way around. Once it's tacked, I'll just have a play. Like, I just don't want anything to be kind of like it's already a bit floppy. So I just want to make sure I'm sort of trying to keep everything straight as we're doing it. I'm just using a little bit of metho here, which is nice and clean. Let's get this corner in, mounted, and welded in.
So they know my sweet baby loves me so. She got me going, yeah, she turns me on. And she loves me, yeah, she loves me, and it blows my mind. Yeah, it blows my mind. She's my lover.
Alright, so she's tacked in. I've just added this little piece of angle on the edge of this just to try and keep it straight rather than us wanting to warp. It made it a lot easier to try and tack this all. I've just done one little pass through the planishing hammer just to kind of flatten everything out. And basically what I'm going to do now is weld this thing, and it's going to warp like all buggery, and hopefully we can get the majority of it out.
One, two, three. When I saw my woman kiss another man, said I know, no baby, no, not again. Another loss of love, another broken heart. I ain't got no love alone, the blues again. Hey, hey, hear what I say, ain't got me no love. Well, it's happened 2 or 3 or 4 times before. You think it wouldn't even mess with a woman no more. But I love how it feels in those tender arms. Ain't got no love alone, the blues again. Hey, hey, hear what
Right, she is welded all the way across. Didn't get too much distortion along here, which is nice. A little bit in this area where there was a lot of burn through. This material is actually a little bit thinner than this. I didn't really realize that when I was putting it together, but one side was really flat and the other side wasn't. So kind of a good thing to check prior to welding it in. But yeah, she's a little bit wonky, but that's, you know, as expected. So what I want to do now is I'm just going to use the grinder, and I'm just going to try and knock down just the weld and try not to hit too much of the actual steel material that we've welded together. I don't want to make that any thinner. I just want to knock a bit of this off, and then we can kind of go and put it through the planishing hammer.
I go home alone again tonight, and I'll cry till I feel alright. I get my mojo working once more. Got the ain't got no love alone the blues again. Hey, hear what I say, ain't got me no love. Sometimes I like to be by myself, but I don't like to put my love on the shelf. But sometimes love hurts, it sure is fun. I got the ain't got no love alone the blues on the run. Hey, hear what I say, ain't got me no love. Hey, hear what I say, ain't got me no love. Hey, hear what I say, I'm alone again.
All right, so we got the rest of the subframe in, and I'm kind of just going on the other side to show you. We wanted to make sure that this was structural between kind of both. So we've added this piece along here, weld straight into the door jamb, as well as this one on where kind of the original one had passed across. We've made that little section in there just to strengthen up where they meet underneath the window frame. So I was able to kind of notch around that and weld that in. And then we've added this piece here as just a structural bit there. And then what we'll end up doing is once everything's in, we'll kind of stitch this guy onto the bottom and top side. And then everything will kind of be really tight and a little bit safer. So what we can do now is essentially I needed to make sure I could weld this in because I wanted to get a full pass around the whole entire thing before putting the sheet metal in. So it's going to be a little bit tricky to butt weld the sheet metal up to this now, but I think we should be okay. So what we're going to do is give this a coat of some weld through primer just so everything's sealed. We'll do the same with the inside of the panels, and then we'll get these things stuck on and weld it into place.
All right, so she's welded in. Wasn't a whole lot to show. I probably should have, but I was kind of in the zone. Basically, I'll kind of just explain what I did, and then I'll kind of show you what I'm doing. So we have it all welded in. What I had done was just went through, just drilled a few holes in the sheet metal, and then I was able to clamp that against our square subframe behind and was able to just plug weld each one across using the MIG welder. I did use silicon bronze on one with the TIG welder just to see how it would go, but I found it a lot easier using the MIG. Bottom, same deal. This is all completely welded in as well. There's just a few holes where I had the sheet metal screws or clecos holding it into place that I need to fill up. It is kind of on the corners here. You can see I was able to just do a little pass where the seams came, welded them up, and got them really nice and clean. Same with on this side as well. So it's all in, all one piece. On this side, plug welded into the B-pillar as it was from factory. Back side, you can kind of see, same deal. What I had also done was run a bar across, and I did utilize and weld in a full piece through here too, just to strengthen everything up a little bit. Handrails still in place. We did the old yank test on it, and it's really nice. But I think what I'll do is I'll add a little piece in here where I cut at 45. I didn't actually have to cut at 45, so I'm gonna add a little piece in here just to kind of finish off the edges. As you can see, you know, that edge I was able to roll it across and weld the seam down
little bit of silicon bronze in there. Same with in here. You don't have to use it. I just like to use it sometimes if I'm just doing some blending work. But yeah, looks pretty cool. And I'm going to explain something too I didn't show on camera. I used some 50 by 50 angle. I drilled a 19 mil hole in it, and then I notched out the top and just cleaned it up with the linisher, drilled 2 holes, and I plug welded these. There's 2 holes drilled through the sheet metal to the subframe as well, and I plug welded these straight to it as well. These only just hold the seat in. They're the same thing that kind of was in here from factory, a very similar setup. These are a lot more stout design, but basically I'm going off of what they showed. So what I had done was, I'll just move over to this side. You can kind of see them better over here. There's one, it's got the hole in it, and then we got the 2 in here. This piece I was able to kind of just frame that in a little bit better so it looks a little nicer and a bit more structural. Plug weld it again. But really pleased with the way they turned out. I think it's quite neat. And you know, we had the client down, he sat in it, and definitely a lot more room that you can kind of see. So what I wanted to show you was, originally you would know that this was a bench seat. So 1 piece back and a 1 piece bottom. But because we've kind of allowed to lean that passenger section back, we needed to cut it in half. So this is what I did. We got this is our back, this is our bottom, and all I did is pre-cutting it in half, I just welded in some flat bar. I haven't even finished this one off, and it's honestly nothing special. I just used the MIG, welded it, radiused the edges, sanded it off, just made sure it was smooth. On the bottom side, I added in this piece here, so just gives it a bit of structure. And what I had done on the ends of these, they have this pivot. So it's a piece of flat bar that's obviously put in here, and then this is what sits inside that little ring that I showed you, I'll show you an example. So I took some flat bar, I drilled a hole on both sides, I pressed the flat bar inside, and then I tacked it on both sides. And it is the exact same angle and size as factory. Same with the back. I just cut those, welded this piece in. I just got some zip ties holding the spring now because I will let the upholsterers kind of figure out what they want to do with that if they're going to use some wire. But same deal, we got our little piece there. It's radiused on the edges, and now it is kind of a 2-piece setup. So I'm going to show you how this works. And this is exactly how they were done from factory. So it locks into one. This bit here, you can see it slides down into the tab, and then it pivots on that. So that is how you get your pivot. So when they were, you know, originally getting stuff out, they would go like this, they'd grab something, and then it would sit down like that. So as you can see, this is obviously sitting 90 degrees. It won't. It had originally these little tabs here that kind of sat off over on the other side, giving it that desired angle for, you know, kind of a more comfortable sitting position. So what I'm going to do is just show you on the tripod as I install the 3 of these. So same deal. The back one goes in to position, same way, and pivots down just like that. Now the bottom is very much the exact same. It, just want to make sure I got the right side. That's that side. What I did was I actually moved the mount on the bottom down here back about 100 mil just to move the whole seat back. So originally the seat would have sat right there, but you can kind of tell not a whole lot of room for a big bloke to get their legs through here. So I moved this back to about, well, to exactly there, allowing a lot more room to pass through there. And there's not really a lot of modifications we can do to the actual bottom there because it is kind of the subframe of the whole lot as well, and the wheel tub where the tire turns. So we don't want to kind of get into that, and it doesn't technically really need to be done. There's lots of room to kind of swing your leg in there now. It's just a matter of getting your foot past the bottom of the steering column. And then in the back here, what's going to happen is, I'll just go and put the other one back. The other one will essentially sit in the stock location. So it will sit a little bit forward, but that is okay. This is going to realistically sit something kind of like, I don't know, like that. We have got the angle right, but I'm kind of just showing you. And then this one here will sit something like this. So they will match. What I'm going to do is make, you know, little stands similar to what they've made here, weld those in so this has a rest, and then on that we could put some rubber adjusters in order to kind of lean it back and create a little bit more lumbar on the bottom if needed, or we can kind of pull it back this way. Originally I thought it looked really nice like that, but it's still too steep of an angle. So realistically, it's going to sit something like this. So we have our, you know, kind of the top section finished, but the bottom section needs to be done. That is locked in, good to go. The bottom piece, having it be a one piece originally, it only had 2 pivots, one on the far side and one right down here that you can see. This is the stock bracket. It slides in, same deal. You lift it up and pull it out straight that way. So what we need to do is, there's got to be something on the other side for this to allow a pivot. But because there's a massive void in here, there's nothing for it to actually attach to. And originally, these seat belts would have attached on the edge here, down under here. So your seat belt would have came up and then it kind of lapped over onto this side. But it's a really weird position because this is kind of your pull point for your seat belt, but the steering wheel is actually offset. So the center of the steering wheel is essentially right here. So you're going to be sitting in the center of that, but your seat belt is kind of off. So if you were to get in an accident, which you wouldn't want to get in an accident in one of these anyways, but the seat belt is not really doing a whole lot. So what we need to do is kind of involve a mount for the seat belt and the seat itself. So what I've designed here, I'm just going to pull this other one out so you can kind of see. In between this little void, I've created a one-piece plate on both sides with 3 holes. It actually picks up the stock seat belt bolt location. And what I'm going to do is, this is going to be kind of like a subframe that's going to sit in here. And what it's going to allow me to do is create another one of these brackets on the top of this, because the rail actually follows this. So I can build one of these off this bracket. So our driver's seat kind of locks into place, folds down. It's nice and secure. And then with this side, it kind of sits about here. So I'm going to make a tab that comes off the side. Again, that'll hold it and pivot it. But what I'd like to do is actually utilize this piece as well to make our mount for the seat belt. So if I just grab a seat belt, for example, if we had our center of person here, which means we want to kind of have, you know, the seat belt situating properly. There is a bit of science and kind of math you need to know in order to, for like width-wise, and you can look that up. In the future, when we kind of go to install the seat belts again, I can explain that a little bit more. But what needs to happen is these need to mount to this. So what I usually do is use like, you know, an 8 to 10 mil thick flat bar. I drill a hole and I do 2 tabs on either side, like a double shear. So 2 would be welded, this would be then pinched in between, and then you have your high tensile bolt going through, making sure that it's locked into place and safe. So in order to do that though, I still want to be able to have 2 seat belt shears and the tabs for the seats. But it's not just this I want to attach it to. I actually want to attach this to that rear subframe that we've mounted in here. So I'm going to cut this out and make a mount from here to here. So that's tied into place. And then I'm going to drill 2 holes, put a flat plate here, and weld a piece from here to here so that this thing can bolt in, bolt out. But when it's in here, structurally, it's actually using, you know, all parts of the body in order to hold this into place for those seatbelt mounts. So it might even be slightly over-engineered, but when it comes down to seatbelts, you know, like you can't really engineer it. You could put as much stuff in there as you want. So I do still want to make it a bolt-in apparatus. So it's kind of a little bit that'll go in here. You're never going to see this anyways, but it'll have the pivots that will hold everything into place. And should be nice and strong for both holding the seat and the seatbelt tabs. So what we're going to do now is measure up some pieces. We're going to cut all this out. I'm going to show you what I'm doing here. We'll make some little tabs for the pivots, and then we will kind of in location know exactly where we want to put our seatbelts. Okay, so now that that is mounted into place, we need to figure out exactly where our seat frame is going to sit, and then we can kind of create our little pieces off that. Probably not even necessary to have to tie this all in together, but I just think, why not? If we're going to create something new, we might as well do it properly. This again, 6. Okay, so this is what I've come up with. I'm just doing a 45-degree, same angle as the back here. I notched out to sit over top of this, and then we've allocated our space for our little plates that we're going to make for both sides. So I'm going to make those now. We're going to have 2 bolts through here, 1 through here, 1 through here, and it'll kind of drop down and pick that up. Could even put one down here if I really wanted to, but I think 2 through the tubing will be really nice. And then this way I can kind of get a full weld all the way around it. And then on top here, I can actually, on the center of it, I can weld the 2 pieces in for our notches. And then from there, we can either mount the seat belts off the side here with our shear tabs or off here, but we can kind of do that at a later date. So for now, we're going to get this measured in, make our plates up quickly, and then we'll weld this in, and then we can start to make our tabs. All right, so we got our sheet here. This is 5 mil, and this is what I've kind of measured, allocated on each side in order to do so. And I kind of think I have a rough idea of how I want to do this. So I'm just going to kind of do a couple quick measurements, and I think I should be able to come up with something now. have our little piece here. And what I did was I ran over onto the linisher right here, and I just went around the edges, just softened them off a little bit, rounded the edges, and then I just used the red Scotch-Brite belt, and then we just kind of cleaned up the edge just to make it look kind of nice. And then I also just did it in the areas where we're going to weld. I center punched the centers, so now I can just put my my speed square back on there, and I can run the line for center again, work out exactly where this is going to sit, and essentially it is going to look something like that. And then we'll have a full weld all the way around right down to the edge. I even left, I believe I left an extra 5 mil on the bottom so I can actually get a weld right around it. And then we'll do something similar maybe for this side. Actually, I could do something just like that, exact same setup. I might go hold that into place and see if it works.
Okay.
So essentially, it's going to be something like that. That will pull in. There's about a 1 mil clearance, but once I stick this guy under, we are probably going to lose a bit of that. Just need to mark center on this.
Oh, I ain't gonna live like this no more. Most of my life's been waging war till I found peace. I could have swore what she did shook me to the core, and I ain't gonna live like that no more. Well, I ain't gonna live like this no more. Trouble comes when the barmaid pours another for a man who should have found the door. Oh, when I get going, you can hear me roar, and you know I can't live like this no more. Oh, I ain't gonna live like this no more. Hurting as bad as the years before. Living in a lie I can't ignore. Oh, I had to cut ties to settle the score. I ain't gonna live like this.
All right, so everything's in place. It's all square. It's where we want it. I really like it. I'm gonna weld it in.
Lord, I ain't gonna live like this no more.
So that is not going anywhere at the moment. While it's in here, I might just do this one little guy on the top here. All right, so we're just gonna leave this in place for now, and I'm gonna build those little tabs coming off and for the seat, and then we can pull the whole thing out, weld it, put it back in, make sure the seats lock into place, and this is a job done. So from a piece of angle, we're able to get this little piece out. Excuse me. And then I've just notched the top of it out, trimmed it, and this is now our little base. So we'll go and sit that under, clamp it down into place, tack it. But what I'll do first, actually, no, I will do that. And then this one, I'll measure double, make sure that it's gonna work. So this can be clamped into place, which we'll do with a pair of vice grips with the seat, and then we can tack it in. All right, so you can see, this is kind of what we've done. So we got one, now this is in, pivots. So if we wanted to, we can flip both up, come in, flip this one down, that's sitting in the stock position, and now this one in our new position. And then what we can do, I was even thinking I could drill a hole through here, weld a sleeve in, high tensile bolt, seat belt one side, seat belt the other side, job done. Okay, so we've got our little mini subframe for the seat belt and seats in the vise, and I've just finished welding everything up. So we got some nice welds put down, which is all straight. Our little tabs are welded in, and this thing is realistically able to be mounted. So I may even just spray a little bit of paint on it, and then we're just going to install it and see what it looks like. Right, so basically that's a wrap on this video. Really pleased, as I kind of mentioned, how it all turned out. It was definitely a lot of work to kind of get it to where I wanted it, with hopefully trying to make it sort of look like something that was factory from the beginning. That was our whole idea with making those profile dies and the power hammer and putting those kind of stock beads that were originally there. And then we were able to take the sun and you know, that bead and put that back in from where the spare tire was. So it definitely looks like a really nice, you know, like kind of piece. And I think once there's new foam and upholstery on the seats, and this is all kind of finished off, this is polished, you know, the back side, it'll really kind of, like, I think, complement, you know, trying to make more room. I think it should look really neat. So I'm really pleased with just how the subframe worked out too. That looks really cool. Holds the seat in place, which is great. So there'll be a little bit of finessing kind of with the seat part of that, and as well as what I was kind of mentioning with that little piece that sits behind here. That's kind of the original one. So that would have sat like that, and then your seat rests against it. It was only two, but this was a full bench seat, so I will have to make a couple that'll come off. But I would like to maybe get the padding and stuff on the seats prior to making that, just to make sure we're kind of at the right angle for sitting in and you know, being comfortable. So yeah, hopefully you guys kind of enjoyed that. It was, you know, a lot of cool things to do, from bending the stainless to making those profile gauges, and then obviously using the magnetic brake, which was excellent. That was kind of first time being able to jump on that and use it. So definitely pretty stoked with how it's all turned out, how everything's kind of tied in together. I'd almost say it's like probably structurally maybe a bit stronger than what was originally there, which is a bonus. So yeah, got some ideas too when we kind of come into the back here in this area, you know, where we have got our subframe kind of through here too. This was a kind of a pretty important piece, I think, as far as just having somewhere where the seat can mount to, and you know, just gives it a bit more rigidity. And then having the 2 bolts go through and tie that other piece into this lower portion that's welded on the bottom as well is a big deal. So I think once it's, you know, maybe all upholstered and we're not sure exactly how that's going to be, you know, designed yet, but it would also be nice to maybe have like a little kind of small partial shelf that they used to have kind of underneath the dashes in like Volkswagen Beetles and that. So don't want to go too, you know, over the top, but just some subtle things. I think if you were sitting here and you kind of have your handle and maybe a little sort of something kind of neat, little wood rattan tray of some sort. But it's, yeah, it's, I'm pleased with how it's come out. So next up, got to take out these major dents in the door or in the roof. There's not much here, so I got a couple more of these that I've ordered, so I will stick a couple more in, and we'll take, there's a big crease on that backside that needs to be done, so we'll be using the shrinking disc, punishing hammer, bit of heat shrinking, and the hammer and dolly work. And then once that's done, got some custom taillights to put in, maybe a set of bubble windows. I know, crazy. And then yeah, as I mentioned, a few like really neat little hot rod pieces that I want to incorporate into this. Just some early Ford stuff that I think will really suit what we're trying to do here. And then yeah, tons more to come. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. It's definitely a bit of a long one, but it was super fun to do. So yeah, make sure you guys like, subscribe, hit notifications, and we'll see you next week on another episode of Bennett's Customs. Thanks, guys.